To those of you that say in order to win you need to spend some serious money, Kozilek is $40, Goblin Crater Maker is 40 cents. Your move, Big Magic. Here's some powerful commander cards for you for under $1. Alms Collector from Commander Masters is sitting at 83 cents, 3 and a white for a 3/4 cat cleric with flash. If an opponent would draw 2 or more cards, instead you and that player each draw a card. This ain't the first time I tried to get some value and somebody flashed me that cat, if you know what I'm saying, Some serious blue balls on this one. Wait for someone to drop a huge draw spell and then drop this in response. That person doesn't get to draw their cards, and then you get to draw a card. Then once this is in play, people have to watch what they do unless they want to let us draw some more cards. This works great in stacks, and oddly enough, toughness matters. It's a 4 toughness, which is actually pretty relevant, and it's drawing, which is always good. And I say this specifically because I just put this in my Kulfanor deck, and it is going insane in there. I love it. Also great in mono white for some draw. Tanazir Quandrix from Strixhaven comes in at 93 cents. 3 a green and a blue for a 4/4 Elder Dragon with flying and trample. When they enter the battlefield, double the number of 1/1 counters on target creature you control. Whenever Tanazir attacks, you may have the base power and toughness of each creature you control become Tanazir's base power and toughness. This is a serious threat in the right deck. Like my brother's Coma deck would probably love this. Turn all the Coma coils into some big boys. Put this in your 1/1 counter deck, obviously, but also pretty awesome in a token deck where you can just turn all your tokens into little mini Tazanirs. Seems pretty great. Regal Behemoth from Commander Masters has dropped to 93 cents, and it's an absolute unit. 4 and 2 green for a 5/5 dinosaur with trample. When it enters the battlefield, you become the monarch. When you tap a land for mana, if you're the monarch, it adds an additional 1 of that mana to your mana pool. Double mana, card draw, 5/5, trampler. What else could a Timmy player want? The literal only thing I don't like about this card is the human-looking hands and face on this thing. It gives me like, you ever seen that thing where like Jimmy Fallon goes undercover as a dog? It gives me that vibe. It's super creepy. Transmogrant Altar from Brothers War comes in at 5 cents and is actually pretty decent in the right deck. 3 colorless for an artifact, pay 1 black, tap, sack a creature, add 3 colorless to your mana pool, or pay 2 colorless, tap, sacrifice a creature, create a 3/3 colorless zombie token. Activate only as a sorcery. This seems great in Aristocrats as a way to get an extra sack with some bonus mana, or a way to get a sack with an extra built-in 3/3 zombie that you'll probably end up sacking as well. I could also see this in like a zombie tribal deck, sack, synergy, mana, zombies. It seems pretty perfect. Marin of Clan Neltoth from Commander Masters has dropped way down to 87 cents, which is crazy because she's a straight mortuary mommy. A big grave goth babe, if you will. 2 a black and a green for a 3/4 human shaman. Whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. At the beginning of your end step, choose a creature in your graveyard. If that creature's mana value is less than or equal to the amount of experience counters you have, put it into play. Otherwise, put it in your hand. This took me and my cousin a good 5 years to realize you just get the creature back to your hand if it's too big, which is crazy. Not to mention the player gets experience counters, not Mirren. So if you're in a Reanimator deck, which is where she probably goes, you'll be able just to get her back, and then the experience counters that are on you still count towards her, which is great. She's an absolute house. Greyhost Reinforcements from Tales of Middle-earth Commander is 14 cents. And for 3 and a white, you get a 1/1 Spirit Soldier with flying and ward 3, evasion and protection. You've piqued my interest, good sir. When Greyhost Reinforcements enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard and put a number of 1/1 counters on Greyhost equal to the number of creatures exiled this way. Damn. This thing has protection, evasion, removal, and it makes itself huge. This is just solid. I don't even think it goes in a specific deck. I think just as a piece of graveyard removal, this is really good. Treasure Nabber from Commander Masters is sitting at 93 cents and packs a hell of a punch. 2 and a red for a 3/2 Goblin Rogue. Whenever an opponent taps an artifact for mana, you gain control of it until the end of your next turn. Again, not a ton to say about this. No real specific decks that this goes in. It's just solid. You get a massive mana ramp if your opponents run mana rocks, and you know us Commander players love us some mana rocks. So this thing will do some crazy work. Not to mention if you can just end the turn with the Sundial of the Infinite, you get to keep all their artifacts for yourself, so I mean, you do you. Sculpting Steel from Commander 2021 is at a measly 32 cents, which is funny because I remember this thing being a chase card like alongside Skull Clamp, which it is not anymore. 3 colorless for an artifact. You may have Sculpting Steel enter the battlefield as a copy of any artifact on the battlefield. Swords, mana rocks, big scary artifact creatures. This card will be any of them. Not to mention it doesn't say target, so feel free to copy those big hexproof artifacts or those big shrouded artifacts. This is great in an artifact deck where you can just copy your own threats or other people's threats. Copying the most powerful artifact in play for 3 mana is still saucy. I stand by that. Stormkiln Artist from Commander Masters is sitting at 60 cents and still does the same amount of heavy lifting it always did. 3 and a red for a 2/2 Dwarf Shaman that gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, create a treasure token. This kind of goes well in any deck if you've got more than 20 instants or sorceries. It allows you to chain together huge plays in those Spellslinger decks or those Storm decks. Happy to see this guy in an affordable price. Now we just need a Pitiless Plunderer reprint. Come on, guys. Death Reap Ritual is 25 cents from New Capenna Commander. 2 a black and a green for an enchantment with Morbid. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died that turn, draw a card. This is the same thing as Morbid Opportunist, except it's an enchantment, which are much harder to get rid of than creatures, like way more. This thing sticks around for most of the game when I play it, and it draws me an insane amount of cards over the course of it. After 4 reprints and a rarity D rank, Tashar is sitting at 14 cents from Commander Masters. 3 and a white for a 2/2 bird cleric. Whenever you cast a historic spell, which are just artifacts, legendaries, sagas, you may return target creature with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, us Commander players love us our mana rocks, and each of those is going to be a reanimation effect, which is pretty crazy. Not to mention our legendaries and our sagas doing the same thing. This is awesome value. Could definitely see this in a weenie or reanimator deck where you're trying to get some smaller creatures into play and then cycle through their abilities. I think this thing's great. You like Eternal Witnesses? What about 2 of them stapled together for a quarter of the price? Green Warden of Marusa is a house. 4 and 2 green for a 5/4 elemental. When it enters the battlefield, return a card from your graveyard to your hand. When it dies, you may exile it and do the same. Solid body, decent effect. The second part is also a maze, so I love putting this in my reanimator, like recursion heavy decks, because you just get to reuse it, and then on the last one, just exile it, get an extra use out of it. Love this guy. And finally, we've got Nahiri the Lithomancer from Commander Masters for 52 cents. 3 and 2 white for a 3 loyalty walker. +2 puts a 1/1 core token into play that you may attach an equipment you control to. Her -2 lets you put an equipment from your hand or graveyard directly into play. And her ultimate, her -10, creates a colorless equipment artifact named Stoneforge Blade that equips for 0 and gives equipped creature +4/+4 and double strike. So first off, any walker that makes a token for its plus is okay in my book. Also being able to cheat out a huge threatening equipment as well as making one is super good. Makes this a no-brainer for Voltron or equipment decks, or she could just be the commander of the deck. I really miss these planeswalkers that could be commanders. I'm hoping they make some new ones soon. I would do an outro, but after dropping $8 for these cards, I had an extra couple bucks for a cheeseburger. Oh, damn, is it good. Anyway, bye, guys. Go play some Magic.